In AOL co-founder Steve Case's book, The Third Wave, Case argues that partnerships are paramount in the third wave. Quote, "If you want to go quickly, go alone. If you want to go far, go together," he writes. In this dynamic discussion, medical school dropout turned venture capitalist Taha Jangda, partner, I wanted to call him Jenga, by the way, like that game. But anyway, partner at HealthX Ventures, asks if partnerships are required for a successful future in healthcare. Let's welcome him to the stage. Thank you.
Good morning. Can you guys hear me okay? So we're going to try to liven up the room a little bit more. We have a break coming right after my talk, so don't worry, we'll get your coffee. But it was about 3 years ago at this time was when I made the decision to leave medical school. I had residency set up to go into interventional cardiology and also in pediatric oncology. And at that time, I was told I was making the worst decision of my life. Let me go to the next slide. Where's the clicker? There we go. Beautiful. So as you can see here, there's a pretty large ecosystem. I mean, bio has always been known as an amazing conference for life sciences and pharmaceutical companies. And what we've seen is that digital health is starting to go into everything. Just yesterday, I was speaking on a panel with the global head of investments at Johnson & Johnson, and what we talked about was San Diego has always been the mecca of biotech. And what has happened now is we've seen digital health enter. And there's a lot of players that exist today, from life sciences companies to providers, to payers, to entrepreneurs, and even communities being built around this. The reason we're all in healthcare has always been known to be a noble profession. We're in healthcare because all of us have a desire to do good. But to really do good, what it requires is having to always learn, right? We're all come from science backgrounds, or some of us come from technology backgrounds. What that requires us is to actually go out there and learn, see the problems that exist in our ecosystem today, and then find problems that we can solve by improvement and innovation. And then the next step is executing. But for whatever reason, healthcare has been lagging. We see it in any other industry, from concierge to transportation to any industry that exists today, digital transformation has begun. But in healthcare, for whatever reason, we're still using fax machines, we're still having the arguments and discussions around whether or not we should even work with vendors that exist in the cloud, and instead we're filling our basements with servers. Now, if you look at this graph here that I found on NPR the other night, is you see that the United States spends more money on healthcare than any other developed nation. And even with spending all those dollars, our life expectancy rates and our infant mortality rates are dismal. As a whole, all of us are failing our populations. But it's not for a lack of effort. It's more of not really adapting and finding solutions. And now, we're not doing everything wrong. President Obama in 2009 enacted the HITECH Act, which required health systems and incentivized them by millions of dollars to install electronic health records. And it was at this time, as you can see, investments increased. It was at that time that you can see other people from various verticals and industries started coming into healthcare. Even at major health systems, Providence went out and hired one of the top executives at Amazon, Aaron Martin, to try to change how they did healthcare as well. So it's not for the lack of technology that we're failing, rather it's the lack of adoption. And it's the failure in adoption where we're stuck. And it is my belief that that also has to do because we aren't executing properly. And it's double faceted. On one side, you have entrepreneurs and healthcare startups that aren't showing evidence-based care. In healthcare, everything we do is peer-reviewed and based around evidence-based medicine. But at the same time, as an investor, I can tell you this, I'm an early-stage investor, and the companies I invest in, the goal is to give them runway for about 12 to 18 months. But a lot of these health systems, their cycles last 18 to 24 months. And instead of demanding technology that we want today, hundreds of physicians do, a lot of innovation teams do, everyone asks for those technologies, but it still takes a long time to do it. So let's look at a case study. This works. Is the Texas Medical Center Innovation Institute. Texas Medical Center is the world's largest medical center. In total, it has around 57 total institutions and 26 health systems, like MD Anderson, like Baylor College of Medicine, like Texas Children's Hospital. It has really become an epicenter for research and academia, and it was a few years ago when they had Dr. Bobby Robbins, now the president of the University of Arizona, and now CEO Bill McKeon, who changed everything. Previously, Texas Medical Center had made about $80 million just off of parking. And what they decided to do, that they wanted to implant innovation, but they wanted it outside of their operating budget. And they committed $500 million over the span of 5 to 10 years. The first phase of that was TMCX, a 100,000 square foot accelerator facility that houses both digital health startups and medical device startups. The next phase of it was creating an academically credentialed fellowship called TMC Biodesign, similar to the one modeled after Stanford, where you took MD MBAs, where you took entrepreneurs, you took software engineers and product engineers, and you sent them around the entire ecosystem, entire health systems, and you said, I want you to find a problem, we're going to create metrics around it, and then we're going to have you execute around it and create a business. A year later, the first team is now listed under Forbes 30 under 30. The next phase was, as mentioned earlier, building these partnerships, building these massive partnerships that can actually push the needle forward, and getting investment in there. Johnson & Johnson committed to building J-Labs, similarly the one modeled after the one here in San Diego and Houston. But the next phase was creating something that plants the seed for culture of innovation, was a Center for Device Innovation, where they would send their top engineers and their top administrators through this process to grow within the ecosystem. Finally, another partnership that was secured was Texas Medical Center was able to convince AT&T to create a brand new business unit around digital health. Now, where are we at today? A lot of us that are at health systems, we don't have the type of money or we don't have the operating budgets to actually do this, like Providence, like UPMC, UCSF. I think Dr. Sawyer is here from UCSF, who's been leading the way for UCSF to do just that. What we need to do now is internalize it. We need to make innovation something we think about from a day-to-day basis. We need to make innovation something that is no longer just a two-person team going around each department trying to find problems, but rather we need to internalize it and use metrics and align our incentives to do just that. As an investor, the biggest thing I look for is whether or not these companies have strong value propositions and whether or not they have product market fit. And as a former health system innovation guy, I can tell you the same thing exists there. And we need to find a schema. We need to find something where all of us can come sit at the same table from the top executive suite to the front desk staff and say, what can we do to actually internalize this innovation? What can we do to actually come together and move forward towards it? And that is the quadruple aim. I holistically and firmly believe that that's where the quadruple aim fits. The quadruple aim is 1, to increase the quality of care. Quadruple aim 2 is to decrease the cost of care. The quadruple aim 3 is to then increase access to care as well. And now the newest pillar in the quadruple aim is to increase patient satisfaction and caregiver satisfaction. This is something that we have to work together and come together to work towards. And now I want to shift this more towards the entrepreneurs and startups within our room and really highlight an aspect of where we're failing. We as entrepreneurs cannot depend on health systems who now have become their own cities, in fact, their own sense of corporations, or where they have massive operating budgets, they have finance departments, they have legal teams, and the list goes on and on. But their core competency is delivering the highest value of care and also managing all the clinical workflows that exist within a health system. As an entrepreneur, I cannot bank on a health system being responsible for the research and also the vetting for my product. Data exists out there today. As you saw earlier, venture funding is increasing at astronomical rates in healthcare. That means there's a lot of noise out there as well. And you have some organizations that have sprung up, like Evidation Health, Node Health from Mount Sinai, and Avia, where health systems will work with them to contract and say, hey, look, what's a trusted company that we can work with? What is a company that has data that supports them. We need to take the scientific vigor that exists in the life sciences and implant that in digital health. We need to validate our results. Even though we don't have FDA processes or have to go through a CE process, we still need to find a way to make sure our results are validated. And that's happening today. Up on the Hill, I was speaking with some people from the FDA a week ago who just recently joined Google, and that process is already happening, of where they're creating the idea of creating certification programs for digital health. Finally, I know I'm running low on time, but one of the points that I want to hit is all of us here today came from around the nation to San Diego to learn about the Digital Health Summit and to see what's really going on in digital health. And it is with that I challenge each and every one of you, when you go visit one of these cities, or even if you're bored, go look at what these cities are doing, because the problems faced by all these cities are very different than our own. And some of them are a leg or two ahead of where we are, and we can take lessons from it. And we need to break apart these silos and bring a sense of social entrepreneurship here to healthcare, here to digital health, of where I, as a CIO from Texas Medical Center, can call a CIO in University of Miami or our partners in Boston and say, hey, look, we looked at this company, Redox, for example. We've worked with Redox. We want to learn how that process was for you. Finally, my final call to action are two things. The MedCity News yesterday started a series in partnership with the ONC and myself to create a series to evaluate digital health communities and how we can really bring collaboration together to this industry. So I'd encourage all of you to read into it and also track it throughout time, because there'll be a lot of narratives that I'll be focused on. Now that I've run out of time, I really want to share another thing. We're going to go to break here in a couple minutes, and you'll be able to get your coffee and water, and we'll be back in about 15 minutes. But what's going to happen afterwards is Digital Health Summit has invited 3 startup companies that exist, that are in the space, one in the interoperability space, one in the patient surveys and patient satisfaction space, and one in the mobile apps and compliance space. And we're going to give them a chance to talk to us more about what they're doing and really give a presentation and pitch what they're doing with questions as well. Thank you.